So how are you, first of all?
Good. How'd you learn about all this podcasting stuff, by the way?
It's kind of a funny thing. So I guess the way that it happened was what started it, I think, was I saw Planet of the Humans. Remember Planet of the Humans?
Yeah.
Did you see it?
I remember you telling me about it. I
Yeah,
did
there you
not
go,
see it.
right? Which
Yeah.
really irritated me to no ends, right? Which was basically at the end of
This
the
is the
day.
Michael Moore thing.
This was the Michael Moore sponsored thing. Yeah, it wasn't him exactly. It was a guy that works with him, who's done his filming with him, and he was kind of a producer or whatever in back of it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so old stuff, bad stuff, and at the end of that film, basically, the only conclusion you can have is that the human race is horrible. We really suck, and we should all just get off the planet. So, kill
Yeah.
ourselves off. Take yourself out, boys and girls, and goodbye because we're good for nothing.
Yeah.
So there was that. And then, Bob, I saw E2's wonderful human element. And that was like a really
Uh-uh.
inspiring kind of thing. It was like, oh, the human element. Yeah, that's right, man. We actually do some good stuff, us humans, every once in a while. We can actually do some good things. And for a long time, I've had this concept that we are really fifth, fourth in the force of nature, right? So you
Hmm.
got the four forces of nature: the air, the water, the earth, and the sun. The awesome power of nature, those four
Mhm.
elemental forces. And we humans have become the fifth force, the fifth element.
Hmm.
We're a force of nature ourselves. And we can either destroy everything about us or we could decide that we don't want to. And I was like, it's about time that we wanted to. And I had started Earthkind years ago with the concept
Hmm.
that, hey, it is Earth. We're all in this together. We're all one humanity. It is all of us on Earth, Earthkind, just like humankind, mankind, but womankind, you got to keep it generic. So Earthkind, so awesome Earthkind was born. And the concept is to take out this message that the forces of nature provide 1,000 times more energy than we use. It's here, it's now. We have the technology, or we have the willpower. All we have to do is have the willpower. We have the technology. The costs have come down. We could save money doing it. We could save ourselves, save the planet, and it's time. So,
That's
so
good.
yeah, it's good, man. So I'm a community organizer. That was the way I started, and this one-to-many thing got started. And I had a business coach that I've been working with, who basically said, you should think about this podcast stuff. And he turned me on to this guy. You ever hear of Entrepreneurs on Fire?
I don't think so.
Big podcast guy. He started out 8 years ago. He's got a very successful podcast organization, Podcasters Paradise. He runs a thing called Entrepreneurs on Fire. He's interviewed 2,000 entrepreneurs around the world. He's identified what the secrets are amongst all of them about how to get stuff done. He's got a whole series of training classes, both free, and then you do other stuff beyond that. You get into this
Uh-huh.
community of people that are doing podcasts and other entrepreneurial stuff. And he basically is kind of like a coach that makes stuff happen. But he ain't doing bad, Bob. So he's got a model that's very interesting. I'm looking to emulate that model in this particular space with the clean energy message that you and I both share. So that's how I got into it.
That's great. And how many have you done so far?
So I'm releasing on this Thursday, actually. So on
All
this
right. Yeah.
Thursday, I'm releasing my initial episode, one with Dennis Hayes, the founder of Earth Day, who not only
Fantastic.
did Earth Day, brought it international, but also has a 52,000 square foot, six-story office building that he built in Seattle, the city with the least amount of sun in the 48 contiguous United States, and that is net energy positive since 2013 when he built it. So it was the first net energy
Huh.
positive building in the country, and it was done in Seattle, where they said it couldn't be done for a six-story office building. So,
Huh. How about that?
and pretty
What's the name
interesting.
of his building out there? Do you know?
It's called the Bullet Center.
Oh, I've been to the Bullet Center.
You've been to the Bullet
Yeah.
Center, yeah, where Grist is, right?
It's
So that's
Yeah, I
Dennis's.
don't know. Is that where Grist is? Yeah.
That's where
I was
Grist
there
is.
years ago, and it was an impressive building. I do remember that.
What were you doing there?
I can't remember.
Okay,
Meeting
no
with
big.
somebody,
Yeah.
meeting with somebody about something. Probably, I don't think it was him, but somebody at the Bullet Center, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So Dennis is the
Uh,
president of the Bullet Center. He's got a really interesting background, and after he dropped out of Harvard, he got a degree, a couple of degrees at Stanford, law degree, became a Silicon Valley lawyer, then went on to after Silicon Valley and doing that stuff. He actually taught engineering at Stanford as a
hmm,
professor. And then he did a bunch of other stuff, National Renewable Energy Lab. He did stuff there. And if you want, listen to the podcast on Thursday. You'll hear
uh,
all about it and some very interesting things as well. So,
I,
interesting
I,
guy. Yeah, interesting
I
guy.
absolutely will listen to that, and I have to say that your your quality of your guests went downhill in a big hurry after him if I'm number two.
Nah, you're not number two. You're like number 5 or 6, but that's okay.
Oh, okay.
I may move you up in the order. We'll see. So yeah, no, man. But and my quality has only stayed the same or gone up. So you on the line, man. So you are
Okay.
an awesome guy. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, there, Bob?
You bet. So listen, I did look at your prompt sheet, and I did put together some thoughts around each of those questions. Are we going to stick to that, or you tell
We're
me
going to stick to
how?
that, but we'll be light as long as you got some time, so we can flow a little bit, which would be great. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I mean, first, just tell me, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then one of the things we like to ask is something that people wouldn't know about you.
Hmm. All right. Well, so I am Bob Keefe. I'm the executive director of E2. And for those of you who don't know E2, it is a national nonpartisan group of business owners, investors, and other professionals who care about and advocate for policies that are good for the economy and good for the environment. I've been executive director of E2 since 2015. I have before that I was doing communications work for. I was doing all the energy communications for NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council, of which E2 is a very small part of. And before that, I spent about 25 years as a journalist, covering everything from the introduction of the iPhone and technology to the inauguration of Barack Obama to melting glaciers in the Arctic to elderly scams in Florida. And uh, that's my background.
That's great, man. And so tell us something that people wouldn't know about you that you care to share.
Well, what they wouldn't know about me is that I spent a lot of that time as a journalist, as a technology journalist, both in Silicon Valley and then as the technology editor for the Austin American Statesman newspaper in Texas, where I the big news of the time was this guy named Michael Dell, who started selling computers out of his dorm room and became pretty good at it. And I think that people would not know about my background as a technology journalist because I suck at technology. And thank God I have 3 teenage daughters, or one's 21 now, but a couple of teenage daughters to help me figure out little things like how to record a voice memo, for instance, on my iPhone. Even though I covered the introduction of the iPhone, I'm not so good with technology. That would be the surprising thing.
So tell us a little bit more about E2, Bob, and some of the amazing things that E2 is involved with, and some of the members that you think are most notable that people would be fascinated by.
Yeah, absolutely. So E2 got its start about 20 years ago in Northern California, when a group of Silicon Valley investors and others got intrigued by the idea of California's work at that time passing or introducing the first ever clean vehicle standards in the world, not just the country, but the world. This was the California tailpipe standards that eventually led to some of the clean vehicle standards we now have at the federal level. And, you know, our founders, again, they came from Silicon Valley, but this was a time when the auto industry and the petroleum industry was coming to California and saying, "Hey, California lawmakers, if you guys pass this policy, you know it's going to ruin our businesses. We're going to go bankrupt. Uh, it's going to ruin our economy. California is going to float off and go to hell in the middle of the Pacific, and it's going to be the end of the world as we know it because this will ruin the auto industry." And our founders stood up and said, "Now, wait a minute, you know, we don't necessarily know that much about autos, but we do know about innovation. And we do know the power and the importance of policies to drive market innovations. And if we get this tailpipe emissions bill passed, you know, maybe those Prius thingies that we're just starting to see now, again, this was 20 years ago, but maybe those Prius thingies will become more common. And who knows, maybe even electric vehicles someday. And by the way, in a place like California and any other place in the country, it's not a bad idea to have a little cleaner air and a little cleaner water, and that can help our economy as well." So that was 20 years ago. Uh, our founders started connecting some of their business buddies and going to Sacramento, and lo and behold, we won on that policy. Flash forward 20 years later, E2 now has about 9,000 members and supporters across the country in 9 chapters, stretching from New England and New York, where we have some really great chapter directors up there, to Seattle and San Diego, where I happen to be today. And our members range from their business background ranges from clean energy and venture capital and investing to real estate and restaurants and just about everything else in between. The one thing they have in common is that they know that the economy and the environment aren't at odds. And in fact, one depends on the other. So we put them to work. We put them to work talking to lawmakers about how smart policies can drive economic growth and help our environment at the same time.
Great, man. And you've done an awesome job as executive director. One of the things that you put into place was the Clean Energy Jobs Report. So can you tell us about that and how clean energy compares to all these other jobs that are massive in that fossil fuel industry that we hear so much about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got started looking at clean energy jobs in America about the time that Congress was laser focused on something called Solyndra. You might remember Solyndra, Ron. But at the time, you had some lawmakers in Congress saying, oh, look, this Solyndra thing's going belly up. This whole idea of clean energy jobs is unicorns and pixie dust. It's not real. There's no clean energy jobs that really exist. This is those crazy liberal tree huggers just trying to make something out of nothing. And we started looking around and scratching our heads and said, now, wait a minute. We just saw some announcement about a clean energy project out in Nevada last week. And wow, we saw something about a big solar thing going up in New York, and just scanning the press, right? And we realized that maybe there is something to this clean energy job thing. So we started an effort to literally examine every corporate announcement, every lawmaker ribbon cutting press release that had to do with clean energy. And we realized there's something to this. And so we started tracking clean energy jobs again around 2010, 2011, I guess it was. And our methodology has increased and improved greatly since then. And several years ago, we teamed up with the National Association of State Energy Officers, NASIO. These are the people that run the energy departments in every state in the country. And EFI, which is Energy Futures Initiative, which is run by former DOE Secretary Ernie Moniz. And we started doing a really comprehensive look at how many people work in clean energy around the country. And when I say clean energy, we're talking about renewables, energy efficiency, clean vehicles, and clean fuels. And what we found, Ron, is that as of last year anyway, 3.4 million Americans now work in clean energy in one form or another. That's in renewables, solar and wind installers, of course. It's in construction trades. Think about the electricians that have to wire those solar arrays together, or those who are putting those Nest thermostats in your house now. They're HVAC installers who are upgrading your systems, or like the guy I had out at my house last week who helped me install a ductless mini split system. And all he does is ductless mini splits. Most efficient air conditioning system there is what I'm told anyway. It's also the folks putting insulation in the attic, and the construction workers putting low E windows on the outside of your house or your 50-story office building in downtown Manhattan. It's manufacturing. It's the people making those windows and Energy Star appliances and electric vehicles. And it's all the other people that support those industries. So 3.4 million people now work in clean energy occupations in every state in the country. Ron, that's more than there are school teachers in America. It's more than there are farmers. It's more than there are bankers. And by the way, it's about 3.5 times as many people that work in fossil fuels. For comparison, the coal industry that we've heard so much about employs about 60,000 people in coal mining in America. 3.4 million work in clean energy.
Amazing, Bob. It's just unbelievable how the industry has grown, and people don't even have any concept whatsoever that there's that many people working in clean energy in all these different forms. So great job documenting that. So we're obviously in the midst of this COVID-19
Yeah.
devastating impact, and how has that affected the clean energy industry?
It's affected it in a bad way. So the other thing that we've been doing is tracking how many, looking at the unemployment data, unemployment filing data for clean energy occupations. We've been doing that since March, and we essentially analyzed through an outside firm, BW Research, that we hire. We track how many people have filed for unemployment in those occupations that I mentioned. And since March, more than 100,000 clean energy workers have filed for unemployment around the country. And that's obviously a big number. Again, 60,000 people work in the entire coal industry. 100,000 plus have already lost their jobs in clean energy. And they've lost their jobs for a number of reasons, Ron. None of them, obviously, their own fault. And certainly in this time, in this economy, there's a lot of people out of work. And every job is important. But clean energy was kind of hit with some specific factors that hurt the industry more than potentially other industries. So for starters, we have, as E2 members, people in the solar and wind business who suddenly found that they couldn't get the parts that they needed for wind nacelles or solar fasteners from factories because those factories were closed down. Energy efficiency, which is the biggest part of the clean energy industry, found themselves getting unable to go into the buildings to do their jobs, whether they were homes in California doing energy audits and putting insulation in there, or major commercial retrofits in places like New York or Chicago. When you shut the economy down and you tell businesses that they can't open their doors, that means to energy efficiency people as well. And then, of course, has been the implications to the financial markets. And certainly there's a lot of people who are wondering what this economy is going to bring in the months ahead. And that includes investors in utility scale solar and wind projects. It includes investors in major energy efficiency retrofits. It includes homeowners who are maybe uncertain where their paycheck's going to come from 6 months and probably don't want to commit to a major solar panel install on the roof or a major energy efficiency retrofit to their home. So the good news is that those jobs started trickling back a little bit in June. We saw a slight uptick in clean energy jobs workers getting back to work in June. The bad news is, as we all know, states have been closing down again, and that's once again affecting this industry. I think in the long term, and you know as much about it as I do, Ron, but I think in the long term, renewables and energy efficiency, clean energy is going to be on that hockey stick growth level again, but it's going to take some time to get through this, which is why we're at E2 anyway, working really hard to get Congress to focus on clean energy in the next economic stimulus and states to focus on clean energy as they figure out how to get their states to recover economically as well.
Yeah, it's great, Bob. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I believe that most everybody coming out of this is going to want to save money, and there's no better way to save money than looking at your electricity, your heating, or your transportation fuel bills and identifying the fact that, you know what, in each of those sectors, you can save 10% or more if you look at it and dive into efficiency and or some of the advanced technologies. So
That's exactly right.
Yep, as we come out of this, there's no doubt. And I've heard you recently talk about some of the ways that you think that some of these clean energy workers could get back into buildings and into power lines and all sorts of stuff. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, if you'd be so kind?
Well, I absolutely will. And I'll also mention that, look, we know that clean energy is a great way, probably the best way to get this economy going again. We know that because of the growth rate of clean energy and clean energy jobs over the years. The two fastest growing jobs in America prior to COVID-19, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, solar installer and wind turbine technician, right? We also know, as mentioned, this is a huge industry that is in every state. These aren't green jobs. They're not blue state jobs. They're not red state jobs. These are red, white, and blue jobs. They're in every state. They're your local HVAC installer who now does nothing but high efficiency work. It's the construction guys, again, that are putting the insulation in your house or fixing your heating and air conditioning system, that sort of thing. We also know from history, Ron, that clean energy is the best way to get our economy restarted again. We know that because in 2009, under the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, we invested about $90 billion in this country into clean energy projects. What did we get from that? What we got was 100,000 major clean energy renewable projects, utility scale solar, utility scale wind, that put thousands and thousands and thousands of construction workers back on the job almost immediately. We also invested in weatherization, the National Weatherization Program that weatherized about 1 million houses. What did that do? That put energy efficiency workers back on the job pretty darn quickly. We also invested through the Department of Energy in early stage and startup clean energy companies. We invested in about 450 companies in this country after the last recession. Those included companies like Tesla, whether you like them or not, created about 45,000 jobs today, and obviously revolutionized the auto industry. It also invested in startup and early stage solar and wind companies that through innovation have helped bring the cost of solar and wind to the cheapest, so that it's now the cheapest price of energy, cheapest energy you can buy in just about all of the country now. And it's because of the innovation from those companies that were invested in the last recession. So we know it works.
So the skeptics say, yes, but Solyndra. So tell us the story
Still
about the
do.
Solyndra there, Bob. Go ahead. Where was that? I mean, as one of the 450 where did they fall in terms of everything?
Well, if you remember, or if you look at the numbers past the talking points of opponents to clean energy, which I still don't know why we have anybody that would oppose clean energy, frankly. But if you look at the investment portfolio from the Department of Energy's ARPA-E program, which is this research and development arm of the Department of Energy, the return, it was a positive return on about 95% of all of those investments. And many times the returns were a lot better than you could get investing in your local bank or in your stock market or anything else. These were good investments. Yes, of course, when you're investing in early stage and startup companies and new technology and new innovation, you're going to stumble every now and then. Anybody who does investing knows that, and especially people who invest in early stage clean tech companies. So yes, there were certainly a few failures, but there were a whole lot more successes. And our country today, the explosive growth of renewables and the energy efficiency savings that you've mentioned earlier that we've been able to realize because of those investments is a pretty good return on investment. So you asked me a minute ago, though, about some specific policies, and I don't want to skirt your question on that. So
get back to it, Bob. Let's go. Come on, talking points. Let's go, man. You're the media guy. Let's go. Hit those points.
Well, look, obviously we need to invest in clean energy to get America back to work. And we can do it in a way that can get people on the job right now. We can do it in a way that gets people on the job pretty quickly, and by practicing social distancing. So recently E2 released a report, we're calling it Build Back Better, Build Back Faster. And what we did was we looked at specific federal programs that are already approved for funding, that are already being administered by the Department of Energy or other federal agencies. We looked at what we learned from the 2009 recession and our $90 billion investments in clean energy then. And we looked at kind of the state of technology and where these jobs could be created. And what we found is that with a similar investment, basically $100 billion in three specific areas: renewables, energy efficiency, and grid modernization. we can create about 860,000 jobs in America in every part of the country, and we can do it right now. We can do that in energy efficiency. Right now, we have something like 144,000 schools, Ron, that are sitting empty across the country right now. They've been empty for a couple of months. They're going to be, in a lot of cases, empty for a lot more months. We can get energy efficiency workers in those buildings right now, upgrading those HVAC systems, upgrading that ventilation systems, putting in better windows that need to be open when those kids need to return, by the way, and making those buildings healthier and safer for our kids, while saving cash-strapped school districts and states money with every electric bill down the road, and getting those workers on the job. Let's look at our electricity grid, our transmission grid in this country. We have something like 200,000 miles of power lines in this country, some of which are older than a century. Here in California, where I am, Ron, 2 years ago, we had the worst wildfire in our nation's history, the Camp Fire. You know what would cause that? The failure of a 100-year-old clip on a PG&E transmission tower. A clip. Now, we've got a lot of electricians and utility workers and grid modernization folks that can get up there a couple 100 feet into the air and make our power grid a lot better. And that's pretty easy to do while you're doing social distancing, by the way, which will not only make that power grid safer, but it will help us transmit more efficiently the renewables that we've been putting on the power grid in this country. A lot easier and a lot better. And then, of course, solar, wind. You know, we've got thousands of miles of coastline in this country. We have one essentially offshore wind project off the coast of Rhode Island. You're going to get some in New York, but on the Pacific coast, we have nothing. In the southeast coast, we have nothing. And those states right now are sending their money to coal and oil companies in some cases, or spending bazillions of dollars on nuclear plants that aren't exactly working very well, when we could be putting offshore wind out there, creating a lot of jobs, driving a lot of innovation along the way.
There's no doubt that there is a tremendous amount of energy. One of the things we've covered before is that we live in a sea of energy, and even the non-solar renewables alone could supply 5 times more energy than we use on this planet. And when you add in solar, we've got 1,000 times more energy available to us. So that's absolutely right, Bob. It makes total sense to get these folks back to work, boom the economy, get off of greenhouse gases and carbon, and start creating the future that we all want and need, and start saving money by doing it. So
that's right.
Absolutely, Bob. Thank you so much. All right, let's get back to our little script here. So you got a quantum quote, Bob? You got something that'll basically be an inspirational quote that'll just ignite someone's brain and set us on fire?
Well, if it is, it's not coming from me. It's coming from somebody else. And like a lot of America, I've had my mind on somebody I knew as a real hero and as an inspiration in this country, the late John Lewis. Back in my reporter days, I failed to mention that I also covered the White House and Congress for a number of years for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution newspaper, and was lucky in that role to get to know Congressman Lewis pretty well. Saw him just about every day. Spent some time with him. And so when I started thinking about an inspirational quote for our times, per your suggestion, what struck me was not something that he said long ago, but his last parting words, which was in an eloquent New York Times editorial that was published on the day of his funeral. And in that, he said, "Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe." Now, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. What I truly believe, and the reason I do the job I do, is for 3 reasons, Ron, and you might have some similar reasons. The reasons I do what I do is for Delaney, Grace, and Carly, who are my 3 daughters. And we've got to leave this world better for the people who are going to inherit it after us, just like John Lewis left it better for a portion of our population, and really all of us, because of what he did So that would be the quote I would posit with you.
That's an outstanding quote, Bob. Thank you so much. It's a beautiful quote, and John Lewis was an incredible guy, and it's so wonderful that you knew him.
Yeah.
All right, so one unique tip, tool, or tactic that you think people need to know and probably don't.
I think it goes back to the clean energy economy and just realizing how vast, how broad this is. I mean, again, when you think of the electricians, when you think of the factory workers, when you think of the people that support those industries in finance and in other sectors, it's a huge industry. And it's one that certainly has grown quite a bit, but one we can really turbocharge with the right policies and some leadership in Washington and in the states.
Great. Thank you very much. So we like to start with, we all had our ups and downs, and sometimes those downs helped spur something new. And why don't you tell us about what's been your worst clean energy or environmental moment, and what was that like? Tell us the story, Bob, and what you kind of got out about it.
Oh, the worst environmental moment. Well, I can think of a couple. Um, One of them has to be, again, back in my journalism days, walking through what were the remains of a place called Scripp Ranch in California following a humongous wildfire. This would have been probably in 2008, maybe 2007. I can't exactly remember the right time, but I remember walking through there with California's governor at the time, Gray Davis. He wasn't governor for very long, but he walking through and just seeing this utter destruction and devastation from a wildfire, and knowing that obviously our world is getting hotter, our 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 lands are getting drier, and the abnormalities that come with climate change, whether it's uh, record flooding in the Midwest, or back in my home state of North Carolina at 500-year floods in 2 years' time, or in the astronomically hurricane level winds that come in California now around the fall that send the smallest of sparks and the tiniest of tinder flying like crazy around the entire state, and can wipe out an entire community, including one that was not too far from where I live, just like that. And then to see that continue over the years in California and neighboring states. So we have a wildfire season now. That didn't happen 20 years ago, where we have a season that's dedicated to fires, and everybody's on alert. So that has to be one of the, at least to me, one of the most personal experiences, because I'm in California and we're having a humongous fire as we speak. 20,000 plus acres on fire and 0% contained for the past week in Northern California right now.
Yeah, the impacts of climate change, we're all feeling them. There's happening in California with droughts, and elsewhere in the world with droughts and fires. Other places are getting inundated with massive amounts of water and floods. And then there's the tornadoes and the hurricanes that used to come every once in a while and now are regular occurrences all across.
Yeah.
Yep. One of the things we're doing is we're running actually a contest that people can find out about. It's the WTF contest, which is weather time fudge or weather time fun, and we're going to get into that later. But basically we're asking people to tell us their stories about their weather time extreme weather event, and hopefully there'll be some fun stories in there as well. But we're going to give out some contests and prizes for the best stories about people who've gone through some pretty incredible situations, I'll tell you, and more of us have it. So thanks for sharing that, Bob. Really appreciate it. All right. Well, in every one of us, there's also this kind of moment where something happens and we go, aha, I've got it. Tell us about one of those for you, Bob, if you'd be so kind.
Um, Well, uh, I'm not smart enough to create something like the I've Got It, like you and so many other entrepreneurs have done, or at least I'm not brave enough to do that. But when it comes to thinking about uh, the I've Got It, I'm just so impressed by the foresight, the knowledge, the passion of business people who care about climate, who care about clean energy, and are able and willing to do something about it. I mean, Ron, you're frankly a poster child for that. You're passionate about this, and you've done so much professionally. You've created not only a career, but a lifestyle out of this, right? And now you're spreading the gospel. Um, when I think about how we're going to get out of this mess called climate change, there are several factors. First of all, we need some leadership at the governmental level. We need the passion from people realizing that they're going to be facing those wildfire seasons or those not so historic floods when they happen a lot more, or hurricanes that are bigger than anything we've ever seen. Um, and we need the work of business people to figure out how to solve these problems and to create a sustainable economy and jobs along the way to do it. And so I'm just always, it's been a while, but one of the best things of my job is getting out and meeting our members at our chapter events around the country and hearing about the cool and interesting things that they're doing all across the country. This isn't a Silicon Valley thing. This isn't a New York thing. It's an Iowa thing. It's a Texas thing. It's a North Carolina thing. It's everywhere. Um, and I'm really encouraged and optimistic that with the leadership of business people, and hopefully our job is to get um, government leaders to do their part. We're working on that. We're going to continue working on that. And with the growing awareness of climate change and the economic benefits of clean energy, I think we're going to make a difference. And I think we're going to get this thing done.
So, Bob, you're way too modest, but thank you very much for all those nice, laudable, kudos to everyone out there. When did it come to you? When did you get it that, oh yeah, business can really have an impact, and I want to be part of helping to make that happen? When
Yeah.
was your aha moment in that realization?
Well, I don't think it was an aha moment as much as it was a long term realization of the power of business. As I mentioned, I spent 25 years as a journalist. Almost all of that, besides my time in Washington, was as a business journalist. I got started covering the banking industry in South Carolina, and then uh, the real estate industry in Florida, and then of course technology and so forth after that. And I realized really the power that business people have to both create something, but also to influence policy. And so if there was an aha moment, it's when I learned about E2 and I figured out, wow, we can have the power of business people to push lawmakers to do the right thing. And, you know, I love them all, and God bless all my deeper environmental friends uh, and all of the work that they do. But it's one thing when you walk into a lawmaker's office and say, hey, we think you should pass this policy because it's good for polar bears, it'll save the trees, save the whales, and even it save our health. It's another thing when you can walk in there as a business person and say, hey, if you pass this policy, Mr. and Mrs. Lawmaker, I'm going to be able to create 500 new jobs in your district. I'm going to be able to invest X amount to build this new company. And here's my big idea. We need both of those things. We need everybody speaking out for climate action right now. And I'm just lucky enough, I think, to be able to work with business people to get that message from that perspective across.
Outstanding. Thank you, Bob. All right. We're going to enter into the Pulsar round.
Oh boy.
Ulsa round, which other people call the lightning round.
Shouldn't we have some cool
I know I
sound
need some
effects
sound
here?
effects, man. I got to get some sound effects. We'll get there. We'll get there, man. I'm still you gotta bear with me. I'm a little new at this, right? But yeah, woohoo! All right. So short, succinct, amazing, and mind blowing answers that enlighten and expand people's views of reality. So, all right. First, Bob, what's the best advice you ever received?
Remember that we all pull our pants on the same way in the morning.
Outstanding. One of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Oh wow. A personal bad habit is I'm impatient as hell, which helps me get stuff done. I think a little quicker than or as quickly as I can, and lights a fire under me to about the urgency of our situation.
Great, thanks. Share an internet resource that you think people should know about.
E2.org, baby.
What book would you recommend to awesome Earthkind people and why?
What book would I recommend? I'm looking around my my desk right now.
I
Ah,
thought you said you're prepared.
well, I was prepared. I don't remember seeing that one.
I missed that one. Okay, all right, good. Come on, come on. What's a great book that you think is inspirational? That's one of your favorites.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm reading right now is it's a book called The Things They Carried, which has absolutely nothing to do with this discussion, Ron, but it is a retrospective on the Vietnam War. And the things they carried refers to the soldiers in that war and literally the things they carried physically, whether it was bazookas or M16s or whatever, and the things that they carried emotionally and the connections they had back home. And I've just found it to be a pretty good read right now.
Yeah, that whole I've known a bunch of different vets, and man, the stuff that they deal with and come back to, and have to work out, and I've seen people go all different ways with it, and
Absolutely.
it's a trying situation, no doubt, man. My heart goes out to every one of them. All right, if you could wave a magic wand, Bob, and change one thing for everyone in the world, what would it be?
So I have to stay non-political on this one, or it would be a really easy answer. But it would be that our lawmakers realize the urgency for action on climate and the importance of clean energy to acting on climate right now.
Great, thanks, Bob. So if this is the one of my most fun parts of the show, which is the
Okay.
WTF or F portion, which is weather time fudge, an extreme weather event that you went through that is memorable and you'd like to share the story of, or the most fun that you've ever had in the type of weather, the season it was, and weather time fun. So WTF or F, which one would you choose? And please share a story.
Well, let's see. I think this is a little tricky, but I'm going to go with the fun part. And the fun part would be one 2 week period where I spent in Alaska. Probably, gosh, it's had to be 15 years, maybe 20 years now. I was actually up there on a reporting trip in which I went to Seward, Alaska, to talk to rangers about the Bear Glacier, which was melting at and has almost disappeared now, I think. But just to see the time span of photos with this ranger and seeing that glacier recede was pretty impactful. But then I spent a couple days. I talked to this forest ranger, and I said, "Hey, I want to see this Tongass National Forest thing that everybody's been talking about. What can you tell me about this?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, why don't you meet me at the office tomorrow at 8 o'clock and we'll talk about it." And I said, "Sure." So I went to the ranger office at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he said, "Okay, you ready to go?" And I was like, "Go, I just got here. I thought we were going to talk about this." He's like, "No, we're going to go see it." So we walked around in the back of this shack and got on a float plane. And we spent the entire day basically dipping in and out of the Tongass National Forest. And the weather connection here is that this is the largest temperate rainforest in the world. right here in our backyard. And the story I was writing about at the time was when I think it was the Bush administration was trying to roll back the roadless rule that would increase logging dramatically in the Tongass. By the way, the Trump administration is trying to do the same thing right now. But just to be in the Tongass and you're in the middle of a rainstorm, a temperate rainforest in the middle of Alaska, and you're in these beautiful views that you would not see in a rainforest, for instance, in South America, with these towering mountains and snow on them sometimes, and it's 75 degrees where you are. And then the night sky, you can imagine, is just amazing as well. That was one of my fun weather-like events, I think.
That's beautiful, man. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. All right. What's the one thing you're most energized about today?
I'm energized about young people, and it's probably become a cliche. Everybody's saying that right now, but certainly the Greta Thunbergs and the young kids just have a greater awareness of the world around them and our impact on that. But also for the young business people, we've got a great program at E2 called our Emerging Leaders Program, and we've got, I think, maybe a couple hundred young, early career or in some cases straight out of school entrepreneurs who are just doing really amazing stuff at the intersection of environment and economy from a business perspective. And just as importantly, they're just as passionate about doing something about the environment as our founders were 20 years ago when they were pushing for those clean car standards in California. So the movement of young people around climate in the past few years we've seen has been amazing. I think we're going to continue to see young business people get even more engaged and change the way that businesses do business in the future as well to make this place a little more sustainable.
Outstanding. All right. Share your parting piece of advice and the best way people can connect with you.
I think for my parting piece of advice, I'd go back to that John Lewis quote I mentioned earlier and simplify it by saying, stand up for what you believe in and do something about it. It's not enough to believe in something, you got to do something about it. And to the second part of your question, if you're a business person and you want to do something about it, you can contact me at bkeefe@e2.org or go to e2.org for more details on how you can get involved with pushing for policies that are good for our economy and our environment and making the world a better place.
That's e2.org?
That's it.
BKEEFE at e2.org.
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so that's the end. The formal part of the interview. We'll cut out the rest, but thank you very much. Anything else that you wanted to say that you didn't get the chance to say, but first of all?
Only to say thank you, Ron, for doing this. I'm honored that you would have me as a guest, and it's really awesome what you're cooking up these days, and I look forward to seeing this continue to grow and you doing great things in the world.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. So you get the awesome part, by the way. Did that come through clear? Because a couple of people were like, I didn't get it at first.
I got it. I got it.
Air, water, earth, and sun, right? Okay. That's
yeah,
good.
I was thinking earth, wind, and fire, but okay.
Yeah, I know. Well, earth, wind, and fire is the normal piece, but it's kind of funny when you put that sun in there, and then you got that little earth head in the middle, which I don't know if you saw that little earth head, which is kind of cool, right? A little yin yang in the earth, and then what's left is me, you and me, man. That's it, man. It's humanity.
I love it.
Awesome earth kind, right? So
I love it.
So, a couple questions for you then. So,
yes, sir.
In terms of who you think is doing great stuff at E2 that I should also get on and talk to and have as an inspirational kind of business model out there, and I also want to get a couple other folks that people probably don't know much about, like Google or whoever else.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that?
Well, tell me the type of guest you're looking for. I mean, are you looking for big names with big companies? Are you looking for
Both.
Kind of.
Both.
Okay.
I'm looking for the whole spectrum, man. I'm looking to basically enlighten people, give them the opportunity to understand that look, this stuff is happening across the board. It's happening with the big companies, it's happening with middle companies, and it's happening
Yeah.
with individual people who are actually making a difference and figuring out how, you know what, our carbon footprint is really dramatic. When I look at my electricity, heating, and transportation bill, most of that is carbon and greenhouse gases. And if I can reduce my cost at the same time that I'm having an impact,
Yeah.
hey, right, great thing. So.
Yeah. Um, Let me give it some thought. A few people that pop to mind, and you may know or remember some of these. I think Greg Smith in Dayton, Ohio, is a good guy. His company is Energy Optimizers, and it focuses specifically on um, school retrofits. And he's got like this running ticker on his website that says, because of these improvements, we've been able to save X number of teacher jobs. You have your typical, it's equivalent of taking 500,000 cars off the road and planting 8 million trees. But he's got like, here's how many teachers that whose salaries we can pay for. He also is a Republican. He's relatively conservative, but he's also smart, and he gets it. And the whole idea of retrofitting schools, I think, is kind of, obviously, as you know, kind of interesting to me anyway.
Perfect, perfect,
Um,
absolutely, man.
yeah, I'd think about, just off the top of my head, another guy named Steve Malink, who's in Cincinnati, Ohio, who uh, has written a couple books on how to be a enlightened CEO when it comes to the environment. And he also has a big clean energy company. And I went to his corporate campus back when the world was normal. And it's really cool. He's got this uh, geothermal, he's got this new geothermal technology essentially. Did I connect you with him, by the
As a
way?
matter of fact, you did, and yeah, he's a
Okay.
great guy, and I'm definitely looking forward to reconnecting with him. So I was in a little different cycle in Westchester when I initially connected with him, and he
Yeah.
had his technology on the geothermal stuff. He was still in pilot phase, so I'm wondering where he's at. He should be cycling out of that, although I don't know what happened with COVID. But yeah, he's a great guy. Thank you,
Yeah, I
man.
forgot about that.
Great,
Yeah, so
great
he
thought.
might be something. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you could think of Sam Aarons at Lyft, who was just announced it's going to electrify its whole fleet and has been talking about that for a while.
Fantastic.
Um, John Foster, I don't know if you know John in San Francisco, but he was CFO for a company called Zoox, which was uh, an automated vehicle company that just got bought by Amazon. And for that matter, I think we could probably connect you with some people at Amazon who are not only trying to electrify their fleets, thank God, but as you know, are investing billions and billions of dollars now into clean tech companies that could not only support its own infrastructure, but other delivery related companies. And Bezos has now what is it, $10 billion Earth Fund that uh, uh, he's investing in a lot of stuff. I think
Great.
of Bill Wow. Do you know Bill in California?
Nope.
Bill is the former sustainability chief for Google and Facebook, who just recently started something called Climate Voice, which essentially is trying to mobilize young people, um, largely in the tech industry, but generally to put pressure on their companies to do more on climate and clean energy, and then also figure out how to get those young people engaged in kind of the work that we do, talking to lawmakers as
Perfect.
well.
Yeah, man. All
So
those guys sound great.
yeah,
Um, I have one environmental justice group that I'm thinking about for the doing energy efficiency stuff down in Westchester. But I know you had some contacts too, and some people that were in the E2 network that might make sense there.
yeah.
There was a guy you mentioned that you talked to when you were going through exactly what should
Oh,
E2's position be.
yeah. Mark Hall. Mark Hall runs a company called Revalue. IO, as odd as that is, but it's both an energy efficiency company, and they do like a workforce training um, uh, side business essentially that trains people in low income communities, communities of color, to get into these jobs.
Great. Yep.
Um,
Yep. That'd be awesome. That'd be great,
so
man.
yeah, so if you want to think about those and jot me a note on who you want to connect with, I'll connect you by email at the very least.
That would be fantastic. I'd really
Okay.
appreciate it, Bob. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, man. So, yeah, I mean, so I'm not quite sure when we'll be airing this. Probably, just looking at the schedule, probably September, but maybe a little bit earlier. So let me take a look and try to figure out exactly where to fit it in.
Good.
The first one, just FYI, as I said, is going to be Dennis Hayes and Earth Day, and then the
Great.
52,000 square foot office building. The second one's a guy named Scott Sklar. Did you ever come across him when you were in
Oh
DC?
yeah, I know Scott.
You know,
Yeah.
Scott, he's a blast,
Yeah.
man. He's really funny. So
Yeah.
not only has he done renewable energy projects on every continent, including Antarctica,
Really?
um, yeah, it's really kind of cool. But he pays $34 a month for all his heat, electricity, hot water in his 3,400 square foot home in Arlington, Virginia, on an eighth of an acre,
Wow.
where he installed geothermal, right? And then he's got an office building he pays $39 a month for. So in terms of
How
being able
about
to
that?
show that you could save money doing it, it's a really great example. So and lots more. I'm sure you got to go. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
sir.
You
Anything else?
bet. Thank you.
Any other ideas or thoughts or comments come to you? Just please, please feel free.